In the history of man, the bow has been here on Earth for a very long time. The oldest known evidence of the bow comes from arrows found in the South African site of the Sibudu cave, where the remains of bone and stone arrowheads have been found dating to approximately 70,000 to 60,000 years ago. It turned from a relatively safe hunting tool to a devastating weapon of war. Fast forward to 1794. In a field outside London, surrounded by the lords and nobility of the British Empire, the Turkish ambassador's secretary used a Turkish flight bow and arrow to shoot 415 yards, partially against the wind, and 482 yards with the wind. Before this outstanding demonstration of flight archery, the bow had turned from the most feared weapon of the Sultan's order to a showy performance sport. Before this, it was supplanted by the firearm as the most feared weapon of the armies of the East. From the Scythians to the Huns, from the Turkic peoples to the Byzantines and to the Mongols, all used the bow to devastating effect. For the Ottomans, who claimed descent from the legendary figure Oğuz Khan, the bow and arrow had mythological power. They descended from the Bozoks after all, one of the two branches of Oğuz's sons. On foot or on horse, the Ottoman soldier was devastating with the bow. His main weapon was able to rain hundreds of arrows on the enemy before engaging him with a multitude of weapons. Of all the Sultan's soldiers, none were fiercer than the Janissary. Before the adoption of their famous firearms, the Janissaries preferred the bow, as the smoke and gunpowder discharge sullied their uniforms. The bow of the Janissary and most of the armies of the empire, excluding Crimean Tatars or their Arabian auxiliary, reflected the needs of the Ottoman soldier. The Tekne Kuram, or boat-shaped bow, was designed for both warfare and target archery. Wider-limbed and less reflexed than the Hilal Kuram bow, which was used for flight archery, the Tekne Kuram, most importantly, had a moderately bendable kazangezi. This subtle and supple flex in the kazangezi offered advantages to a bow that had to withstand the rigors of campaign, albeit at the expense of some mechanical efficiency. It made the bow more stable and much less likely to turn inside out. Moreover, the Tekne Kuram bows could, if necessary, be left strung for extended periods of time, because of the stresses were distributed over wider and longer limbs. The back and sides of the Turkish bows, where the sinew was exposed, were covered with fine leather and sealed with varnish, which was usually sandarak. This not only protected the sinew from the warping effects of moisture, but it also provided a reasonably rugged outer skin to withstand the knocks and bumps of military life. The leather's facing were also provided a canvas for the most exquisitely painted and gilded arabesque decorations. When combined with similar ornament on the highly polished surfaces of the horn belly, this created bows of exceptional beauty. The hand-to-hand combat weapons of the Janissary was never standard and were kept in armories under lock and key, by the hearth of the armorers, and only allowed to access them during the training or war periods. They viewed the infantry line fighting style of other armies as akin to fighting like slaves or robots, without a warrior's valor or prestige. So uniformity was not priority. They would choose their weapons of choice before each battle, adjusting for their roles on the field. The main sword of the Janissary infantry was a short yatagan, or curved large knife that performed many jobs that was necessary for the soldier's daily life, other than killing, of course. They also used the special spear, battle axes, and other infantry weapons, but only as secondary weapons on special ceremonial occasions. Over time, the Janissaries acquired some of the weapons of their adversaries as preferred weapons. The Mamluk Sword, the Damascene knife, or the European battle axe from either Russian or Italian influences, for example. Firearms were introduced into the corps during the first half of the 15th century. As far as we know from the available sources, only a few regiments were initially equipped with firearms, but as firearms reliability grew, the remainder of the corps acquired them as well. Additionally, a kind of primitive hand grenade, the El Kumbarasa, became a well-liked and common weapon after the 1560s. The Ottoman leadership came to understand the potential and importance of firearms in a remarkably short time. However, they insisted on keeping the composite bow while most other European nations. A notable exception was the English insistence on keeping the longbow up until 1589, discontinued the old missile weapons that required long and continuous training, which they could easily replace with easily learned firearms. A rare blend of pragmatism and conservatism played an important role in this decision. The Ottomans had great faith in the capability of the traditional main weapon, the composite bow. Moreover, early firearms, arquebuses, and matchlock muskets were often faulty and unreliable and slow. In comparison, the composite bows were accurate, reliable, and a high rate of fire, 9 to 10 shots per minute against 1 or 2 shots per 3 minutes. A well-trained archer also had greater effective range of about 300 meters, whereas hitting a target with a firearm further than 70 meters was pure coincidence. To maintain proficiency in archery, the Janissaries had the advantage of the Ajami Uyar, in which every soldier spent a mandatory average of 6 years. After this long training period, on-the-job training within the regiments, and weekly weapons training under control of the gunner specialists gave an ample opportunity to succeed in marksmanship. This was an institutional priority that commanders took active roles. For example, the 54th Alberta commander was the master archer, and Tufeng Chibasha the master gunner of the whole corps. The size of the guns that the Janissaries used changed dramatically from the feared but anti-personnel Abbas gun to the light 22mm guns used by the infantry. Ottomans imported firearms from a variety of places, from Africa all the way to Greece, before becoming a master gun makers themselves, providing both weapons and training to the armies of Babur in India, for example. The Janissaries never relied on mass volley fire, almost always relying on their famous individualistic marksmanship, firing, then charging en masse at the enemy, encouraged by the best bands on their rear. So that's it for today's video on Janissary weapons. Thanks for listening to this video. If you'd like me to talk about any other topic, please leave a comment below and check on the other videos on my channel. Thanks.